Tonight I'm going to be talking about a game called Grimslingers, as you can see here. The goal of this first video is just to kind of give a quick overview of what this game is, its current state, and we'll see how far we get tonight. But my goal is to take this game, which is, in my opinion, pretty special. It's a game, I think it came out in maybe 2017, 2018, um, had a few expansions, etc. But it's got a really unique universe, a really unique vibe, and honestly has an interesting structure. So I want to highlight it a bit because I think it's got a lot of opportunity for cool narrative play. Um, but my goal is to kind of give you a little bit of background on the game and show you sort of how I would recommend, based on my research, to play this in the year 2025, trying to give it a go. So first things first. Grimslingers, as you can see, it's a mostly a card-driven game, and this is going to be one of those videos where I say I'm sharing with you my understanding. Please in the comments tell me if I'm off on any points here. I'm sure I'm going to get stuff wrong. This game has had a pretty storied and interesting history, but yeah, it's a card game. My understanding is the first version of it was primarily like a dueling card game. Was one of the main modes of it. Sort of in uh, the inspiration of like Magic the Gathering or something like that. It's obviously got a Western theme. I'll speak more about that in a little bit, but a lot of dueling, etc. But one additional mode that they had for the game was the called the Tall Tales mode, which is more like a narrative mode that had a little bit of story and campaign and exploration and things like that. So the history of the game is that, version one came out. I believe it was originally kickstarted, um, and then a few other versions came out. After that, there was like a Grimslingers Advanced Edition. There was Grimslingers the Northern Territory expansion, which I have a book for over here. So this is the Northern Territory. This is an expansion for the game. So there's been a number of different versions, and I think, there are even decks out there for just the dual version of the game, like a single deck of cards like this that, you can play duel with your friends or advanced duels. And I mean, what you're probably getting already a feeling of, and this is my impression of the game, is that the designer here, Steven, who I've spoken with recently, a really cool guy, he's incredibly creative and sort of continued to build on this game over time. Um, but what that sort of meant was that some of the older versions of the game, if you jump in at any point, you can get kind of confused about what am I supposed to use from what version, and uh, just it can be kind of confusing where to start. So that's one of my goals with making this video, is to give an overview of where I would recommend to play, as I understand it, sort of the most recent version of the game, with all in with all the bells and whistles, etc. So yeah, let me start a little bit by sharing what this game is. The game is essentially, the setting is one of the coolest parts of the game. So it's set in an area called the Forgotten West. It's not really, specified when it is, but it's obviously Wild West inspired. But it's sort of that, if you haven't encountered it before, it's based on like a sort of weird West uh, vibe. So that's sort of like a dark fantasy horror Wild West where there's weird supernatural stuff going on and stuff. The closest vibe I can have is that it's set in the American West, but in a sort of area where when you go in there, it's almost like purgatory. It's a place where people are banished, etc. So the story of your character is that you are a titular Grimslinger. So I just grabbed a little miniature here from Western Legends, one a separate Western board game. And but my current Grimslinger, there's a few. My current Grimslinger is named Lefleur Noir. My French is horrible, and the Professor. So that's Lefleur Noir, and the Professor is that bear with it next to her. The game is very surreal, a little bit tongue in cheek in terms of the setting. But essentially, these Grimslingers, which my character is one, were all created by this guy, Icarus. I printed out a little miniature of this guy. He's pretty cool. They call him, I believe his name is the Iron Witch. That's his nickname. So there's a lot of magic in this universe. It's considered like everybody's referred to as witches. Uh, and basically, Icarus, as far as I can understand it, is trying to escape from the Forgotten West. He kind of considers it a purgatory. He's like half man, half machine, and he creates these Grimslingers, like finds characters. Some of them are animals. Some of them, my character's a vampire from Europe, but like he finds them and converts them into a Grimslinger, infusing their body with a bunch of like metal and magic, uh, and he's sort of sending them out on missions to try to use them as tools to escape the Forgotten West. And the big bad, at least in the first campaign, is this character. Uh, looks like a sort of dinosaur with a bunch of arms, but the name of this character is the Witch King. And again, I printed printed this out. You'll see like here's a little miniature for the Witch King, if that's showing up properly. Um, so I'm not going to give too many spoilers about the campaign, but so far the story is you're being sent out to sort of figure out how to encounter the Witch King and defeat the Witch King in a duel, and that will somehow help you escape the Forgotten West. So that's kind of like the frame of it. You can see over here there's all these different monsters that you can encounter. The art is just frankly astounding. I think if I don't know Steven's background, but um, it's pretty obvious that he's an intensely talented illustrator. So he designed the game, wrote the game, did all the art for the game. It's sort of a one-man show. And that's one of the most striking things about the game if you get it. Like I almost want to collect all of it just because the art on the cards is so fantastic. Like this is the back of the quest cards. It's just everything is so thematic and beautiful. So the structure of the game with the tall tales. I'm not going to talk about the duel mode. The duel mode is just you do perform duels in the game against monsters. These monsters over here, when you encounter them. But the reason I'm playing it, I'm much more into like exploratory open world adventure games, and there happens to be one in this really cool world in this game. So the structure of the game, the Tall Tales version, is that you're kind of moving around in. Okay, let me preface. Again, you might get kind of confused, but I'll try to ask questions in the comments. It was confusing to me coming in, but this was the original map of the Tall Tales in sort of version one of Grimslingers. You can see it's functional. It's got some like locations on it, etc., that you can go to. Um, some people might prefer that because it's an actual map, but the in the Northern Territory expansion that I showed you, they added the ability to sort of lay out this deck of cards as a map. This is a representation of it, but in the original version, you would take sort of a deck of cards like this, with normal kings, queens, etc., and lay them out in an array on the table. And you can still do that, but it's very, in my opinion, it's very space inefficient. So, but that was the default mode of playing the Northern Territory expansion. You would sort of move around, have encounters, events, fight monsters, etc. There are locations on the map, and each of the areas. Like I can show you one of this area book that I have for the Northern Territory has sort of this would be the layout for the first zone called the Valley of Death, which you can see is the same layout as is represented here on this page that I printed out, and I'll get to that in a second. But this was what you would originally do. You would lay out the cards, you would move around these cards. There's little like narrative entries for the different locations, etc. And then you have your actual story that you're going through, which is a little bit of, objective, choose your own adventure, etc. Okay, so that's the high level. You're sort of moving around the map, having encounters. So what is the actual structure of the game? Well, let me see where to start. So there are different elements of the game. Maybe I'll just walk through what's on the table right here. So this might be a way to give you an orientation. So as I mentioned, there are all these monsters over here. Half of them are from the core game. Another half are from the Northern Territory expansion. If we take, for example, the bandits over here, if I can reach them, you'll see you have the bandits, which you get with, again, some stellar art. And then the bandits have three specific ability cards that they have here, skill cards. They all have different abilities on the back. And you would normally, when you encounter an enemy like this, you'll take the bandits and their 3 ability cards. And then there are these generic creature behavior cards. There's 6. uh, I seem to have 5 here. One must be misplaced. But there's supposed to be 6. I think again 3 from the original game, 3 from Northern Territory, and you'll randomly mix in 3 into their deck. The idea is you have some idea what the enemies will do if you've encountered them before, but there will have some randomness from what comes from the uh, general creatures over there. Um, and then you have creature modifiers and creature dispositions. It's kind of a cool concept. The idea is that, if you encounter bandits, you'll draw a modifier from here. And again, this was like doubled when it came to the Northern Territory expansion. But for example, just flip on over. It's infatuated, and what it says here is at the start of the duel, players must take turns to draw number cards, which I'll show you in a sec. The first to get a heart may ignore the FX, meaning the effects, uh, the actual outcome of all cards the creature plays. Ignore this modifier if you're playing solo. So this doesn't really apply in a solo game. I am playing solo. I failed to mention that at the start. But the idea here is that there will be some modifier to the creature when you encounter it. So even if you've run into the bandits before, they'll have some specific modifier. The theme there is they'll the monster's in love with one of the characters, one of the players rather. And then you will draw 2 creature dispositions. So these are the dispositions here. Again, beautiful, beautiful art. But these will be like prepared, self-conscious, tired, angry, frisky. And if you look at one of these, they're basically opportunities for you, the player. So if the thing is angry, it'll say all players must pass in the same turn. If this disposition is resolved, creature must pass their next turn. So it gives you an extra strategic option. It basically says if you do X or Y, Z, then some positive outcome will come for you. So, for example, I had one that was like if the creature discards X number of cards, then you do damage to them, things like that. So, a lot of random elements when you encounter the creatures. So that's one part of the game. You'll be encountering and sort of dueling creatures while they're playing their skill cards here, and you're playing your skill cards against them and trying to, in Magic the Gathering or many RPG fashion, trying to drive them down to 0 hit points. They have energy points as well as you do, so you're having that dual component. That's one part of the game. Um, then, as I mentioned, you're moving around this map. So how does that work? Um, in the base game and in the base mode of Northern Territory, you would be laying out these cards, and then as you flip them over, so for example, let's say I flipped over this card. This is a Jack of Spades. Um, Again, really beautiful art. Um, what would happen here is you would look up for the territory that you're in, the map, what happens when that happens. So here, the Jack of Spades is a particular event in this area. I actually would have to pull up the map to see what the Jack of Spades is. Um, I think it's an actual location. Um, but in essence, you're flipping these over. Some of them will be individual locations. Some of them will be events. Normally, if it's a red card, a red numbered card, it's an event where you would draw an event from this deck. This is the one that I'm currently doing, Inconsolable Tar. Don't read it if you don't want spoilers. But sometimes there'll be little narrative events. Sometimes they'll be positive. Oftentimes they're not, as is the case with a lot of these event games. So if you draw a red number card, you'll get an event. If you draw a black number card, nothing happens. If you draw an ace, then you have like an attack against, I don't know if you can see this here. You have a sort of battle against one of the creatures that's in the area. You can see the attack roll thing there. There's a list. These are sort of the creatures that are in this particular area. And so if you draw an ace, you would sort of randomly fight one of those. So that's the base of Northern Territory. What Steven did in, you know, as a optional way of playing, but I appreciate it, I'm enjoying it, is instead of laying out that huge wall of cards that you're moving across, which is hugely table consuming, he went ahead and created these sheets, like super thematic sheets for every single map in the game. I mean, I just in memory, there's probably like 7 or 8 of them. And they have the exact same layout of the map here, but they um, really condense down, so you can just move a miniature across the map here. And then they do a little bit more, they rely less on drawing cards to do things. I mean, you still do draw a card, but if you get a red number card, for example, you would just roll on this event table. Um, so you can more directly, and he changes up the events that are in each location. In the base Northern Territory game, you would just kind of draw a random event from the card. Um, or, there's specific creature modifiers here. There's a table for that. There's the a specific attack roll thing here. So it's got everything that you need in this one little nice thematic sheet with some art uh, to roll around. So this is again, you can play however you like. I like this. It's a lot more space efficient, etc. So that's one component of the game. You're sort of every time you move to a new location, you draw a card here from this deck, which by the way is custom made. When you go to the location, it says include these specific cards here, and you know you you use the remainder of them for like generic draws over here. Um, yeah, so that's moving around the map. You have like events that'll occur. Can go to these specific locations that are on the map. You've got like the Valley Haven, or let me pick this up again. The Valley Haven, or Owl's Magic Market, or a white portal. Portals are actual, like you can step through a portal and go to a completely different area. As far as I can tell, it's completely open world. You do have like a quest that you're doing, but you could just decide to go to this. I think this goes to like the Red River, which is a whole different map. You have the King's Altar, which is a location. Llama Llama Sip Sip, which is sort of like a tavern area, I think run by llamas. Vault of the Bandit King, Goblin Grotto, and the Lone Titan are the locations here in Valley of Death. So yeah, that's the open world portion of it. I'll talk quickly about some of the other things over here. You have the item deck. There's a space for it there. This is the size of the item deck when you um, combine the core game and Northern Territories. You've got all these different things. These are like supplies items. Then you have all these different weapons. These are like ritual items. There's a whole heap and pile of specific items here that you can use in combat. Some of them do things outside of combat. There's like treasure maps that you can combine three of to uh, like find any item that you like. So a lot of variety there. And then you have this is the item discard pile, and then you have the legendary item deck right here, which has some badass items. Not too many of them, but there were more that were added in the Northern Territory expansion. Um, and you can see here there's a distinct sort of even though this is a dark fantasy vibe, there's a lot of comedy in the game that, you know, to your taste. I'm not a huge fan of comedy in like dark games or like my games in general. I like them to be more serious, but it, it's more like cute nods than it is like super goofy. So it says well crafted, magical, looks cool. It has all the right elements. You know, there's like different goofy stuff in the game. Then we have this Get Lucky deck, which is based. This is whenever it tells you to DNC, it means draw a number card. This is essentially a randomization between 1 and 5 that you'll use often for, you'll be sneaking into an area and it's like push your luck, draw number cards, and if you get a certain one, then you like make a noise. But if you get another one, then you get to steal some items, and there's cool little events there. Um, Trying to think what else to cover. There's a lot of so I'm gonna check the length on this video, but I probably will do another one that is more focused on the character board and sort of the spells and maybe how combat works. But just to show what's over here, you have all these what are called signature spells. So there are generic, I won't call them generic, but everybody has elemental spells. There are 5 of them. I'm trying to get my actual hand here to see if I can show you the list, but I'm sorry, there's 6 of them. So you have fire, ice, lightning, water, earth, and wind. Captain Planet, if you get the reference. They all do like different things in the actual dueling game. They kind of like counter each other, and there's a bit of rock paper scissors. I think the facing enemies, it's less of that. You're kind of playing things to do damage and reduce their health. Some of them are just straight out better than others, but you have to kind of like balance when you get them back. But everybody starts with these like six elemental spells. I have another ability that comes from my character. There's a whole set of character abilities for the four characters that are part of Northern Territory expansion. Um, but that was a sort of long explanation to say that these are what are called signature spells. So these are all unique spells that do specific things in combat, and there are a huge amount of them. So there's a good variety of things you can do, abilities you can get. Maybe the last thing I'll talk about here, because it's kind of a structural element for Tall Tales, is you have these sheets. You have an achievement tracker. So you can see here I sort of created my character, and then you mark off achievements, and they give you PP, progress points. So it's basically XP. So this is saying when you complete chapter one, you get 3 progress points for everybody, and there's all these different achievements in each of the locations here um, that you can see. That some of them are like very specific to the area. So this one says llama sip sip, show some respect by resting. You get a PP. I might have even done that. I didn't pay attention to all that stuff. But you also have a um, progress tracker. We can spend your progress points. You start with 20. I currently have 25, 23. And then you can spend them to upgrade certain things. There's all kinds of stuff you can do in sort of RPG fashion to learn different skills. So I have Lafleur Noir. So I got my vampire passive abilities, that Del Hombre uh, card that I just showed you that's a character ability, and then I raised my max HP to 6. Um, so yeah, there's a RPG element here and an achievement element. So as you are probably saying, I mean, I don't know how much you're actually tracking here. I don't know how overwhelming this is when I'm explaining sort of overall stuff of the game, but there's a pretty like rich open world exploration focused game with a decent amount of narrative built off of this kind of card game, which is why I'm trying to demonstrate it to y'all. Um, so I might stop this video here. I think we're at 22 minutes. Just as maybe this will serve as, if you think this is interesting, then keep watching. I'm going to try to go through a couple of the other systems in the game. And then my goal is to actually kind of play a little bit to demonstrate how the game plays, because me trying to learn it, it's been a lot. There's a lot of different editions, a lot of different rule books. It's hard to know what is the sort of single source of truth or how to even sort of get going. So I'm hoping to show some of that off here. One thing I want to show, and I'll put a link to this in the description of the video, is that the creator Steven, after Grimslingers sort of finished, the Northern Territory had come out, he continued to develop for it. I think even after it kind of stopped being sold. It's actually one thing I should have mentioned at the start of this video is the publisher, Greenbrier Games, has gone out of business. It's very sad. I have another game by them, Folklore: The Affliction, which I really love. But because they're kind of out of business, maybe this is kind of hard to find, but it's more of a, this is not, this is kind of a niche game, and uh, so you may be able to find it or all of it for a decent deal on Board Game Geek or whatever. So I think it's still worth covering. But that is to say, um, this is a Google Drive folder, and Steven has put in just a humongous amount of content in this Google Drive folder for people to use. Those 3D printed models that I showed you, those are actual STLs files that he's just distributed for free. I think they were originally part of one of the Kickstarters, um, and he's just kind of distributed them as part of this free thing. So I'll put a link, but I wanted to mention what I'm currently using and what I consider to be the sort of core elements to put together something that's cohesive and goes with what I understand Stephen's latest guidance to be. So let me do that real quick. So basically what you want to do is, if you're trying to start from the start with this, which is with the Valley of Death campaign that I have here, keep in mind, this Valley of Death campaign was for originally for the core game before Northern Territory came out. So in the Northern Territory expansion, it says, oh, you can play Valley of Death, but be prepared that, some stuff might not really make sense. You might have to make some tweaks. So Steven, being awesome, created this file right here, Grimslingers core game campaign updated to work with expansion is what you want. So if I go in here, this is the full on story booklet for the first campaign story, but it's been completely updated to work with the area maps with Northern Territory, all of the events and stuff that's been in there. So he basically completely updated. And by the way, this guy is just amazing. These are all these ones that are PMP. These are like the actual games, like the legendary items, the core game, the Duels micro game, the expansion, they're all in here. Like he's basically giving away the game at this point because probably because it's out of publication. So if you wanted to actually print out all these cards and make them yourself, you could do that. When, so this game will always be hopefully around. So anyway, I'm using that as sort of I'm not using the booklet in the box at all because this has been updated to work with the expansion. Then the actual expansion rulebook, there's been, if you go around and look at stuff from the game, there's some sort of, consternation, critique about previous versions of the rulebook, things not being exactly clear. Stevens put, I think, a lot of time into trying to revise the rulebook a number of times. Uh, but he states in the expansion rulebook, which is right here, um, that this Northern Territory rulebook supersedes all other rulebooks. Consider this like the latest of the core rulebook was version 3. He says sort of consider this a version 4, and this is version 2 of that Northern Territory rulebook. So this is what I'm primarily using to learn the game and sort of my main source of truth. It's sort of split. One of the challenging things with the game is it sort of says, oh, go play a duel first before you go play the Tall Tales. I was not interested in that. I'm trying to play this game solo. So I had to kind of read through the duels information in order to understand the Tall Tales stuff. But anyways, this is what I'm using as my main resource for learning the game. Now I will note I've run into a couple things where hopefully you won't have to do this. I'll try to, explain as much as I can, but I just wanted to give a heads up. There's some stuff that is, if you're mixing in everything from the core game, there are some cards that still kind of only make sense in the context of the core game. For example, one that I got was an event that said, if you land on a rest space, then or like consider this area a rest space. And in Northern Territory, there's no such thing as a rest space. So I asked Steven, and basically, I had to go back to the core game rulebook, which the latest version is here, to figure out what is a rest space and what is it supposed to do. And essentially, it's just kind of heals you. So I had to figure that out and be like, okay, I got healed, cool. It So far, it's kind of few and far between, but I did want to mention that the core game rulebook is in here. So if you kind of encounter something in the game that just doesn't really make sense from within the Northern Territory expansion, that's another resource for you. So you may be wondering, where did I get this sheet here? That's under this area printouts. So he has in both black and white and color one of these printouts for every single one of the locations in the game. He's also got an instruction at the top telling you how to use these. I'm not going to go over them in this video, but this is where this sheet came from. Let me see. And then am I using anything more? I think those are the main three things that I'm using. So in summary, I've basically taken everything from the game and put it all together. There are a couple things like that he says to pull out for Northern Territory, such as there's like these archetype cards that he says to remove. It's in the Northern Territory manual what to take out. Then I'm using the updated area maps, which he, notes they are for faster setup. You can just kind of plunk this down and start playing. You don't have to lay out that huge tableau of cards. It takes up a lot less space. And then I'm using primarily the expansion V2 rulebook for my primary rulebook, only dipping into the V3 core game rulebook if there's something that doesn't make sense or is legacy. And then I'm using this core uh, game campaign updated to work with the expansion to play the first campaign of Valley of the Death. So hopefully that's enough to give you a sense of how to put this thing together. If you got this game and you're just trying to be like, oh, what is what? How do I like even put this stuff out here? What are all these different cards? One thing I will say is I got this deluxe box with the version, which has been really nice. If you have a chance to get it, it has these little dividers in here that allow you to kind of, if you were to just get this game normally, you would probably open this up and be like, what are all these cards? So this provides you a very nice kind of miscellaneous cards, and on the back it has a list of like exactly what all those cards are, so you can organize the cards and make a lot more sense of it. And this deluxe box has plenty of space. It's way more than you would probably need. Okay, I said I was going to stop earlier. I'm going to stop here. So that's kind of like an overview of the Tall Tales mode. Next, I will talk about the character area, which is the really the heart of the game, and then maybe play out a duel depending on how long that takes. Hope this was helpful, and again, leave comments if you have any in the comment section, and I will post a link to the drive folder that Steven posted in the description. Talk to you all later.